Big shout out to all the worker bees out there. What's good, y'all? My name is David, and this is Farm Friday with FoodWhat. And it is not just any Farm Friday. It is the 1st of May. You know what that is? That is May Day. May Day is an international holiday celebrating workers all across the world. And in honor of May Day, we have a very special episode today. Got my favorite shirt, Revolución Latinoamérica. Shout out to Che Guevara, Subcomandante Marcos, and Emiliano Zapata. The great Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata once said, "La tierra es de quien la trabaja." The land belongs to those who work it. So let's talk about work. Let's talk about May Day. So May Day is International Workers' Day. A day meant to honor the working class and celebrate everything that they do for the world. Now, May Day is internationally recognized. Over 66 countries recognize this as a holiday. And it started right here in the US. During the late 1800s, during the Industrial Revolution, aka the birth of the factory and the factory worker, workers were fed up with poor working conditions. In some industries, the life expectancy was as low as your mid-20s because of how poor working conditions were. People were overworked, mistreated, underpaid, and this wasn't just men. This was women and children too, who were suffering from poor working conditions in American factories. Now, what this ended up leading to was massive strikes. Massive organized labor unions went on strike and protested these working conditions. And on May 1st, 1886, these organized laborers were able to fight for an 8-hour workday. That was May 1st, 1886, right here in the US. So May Day started as a fight for workers' rights. Now, it's no longer recognized by the US. We no longer acknowledge it as an international holiday. Why is that? Now, why wouldn't the US want to recognize International Workers' Day when it was created here? Why is it now just an international thing? Well, why don't we ask presidents like Grover Cleveland and President Eisenhower why they wanted to move May Day to something else, make it something it wasn't. President Cleveland turned May Day into Labor Day and then moved it into September to sever ties with international workers' movements. Same thing with Eisenhower, declared May Day as Law Day. In other words, a celebration of the placement of law and the creation of the United States. And that don't sound like something very productive for workers, right? So, what happened? Why is it that we can't honor our workers and that we don't recognize it here in the United States like other countries do? Well, it has something to do with the working class and working class movements known as communism. What exactly is communism? Well, it's the working class revolution in which the working class, also known as the proletariat, overthrows the elites, the ruling class, known as the bourgeoisie, and distribute public resources equally amongst everybody. For you history nerds, I know that's oversimplifying it. There's a lot more we can say about what communism really is and what it means for the people. And of course, at any point, I would love to have conversations about this with y'all, because it's chess, it ain't checkers. Now, May Day is often associated with countries that are communist, or that were at one point. And to this day, it continues to be a day where workers will protest, organize, and fight for their rights. And so, that was an immediate red flag to the American government. And the reason for that is that we are a capitalist society. And an empowered working class that recognizes that it is literally the heart and blood of the economy would be a threat to that. Now, if that sounds a little familiar, that's because we are currently in a situation where essential workers are still running the country and still getting improperly compensated, improperly protected from coronavirus, and still being forced to work under the same conditions. Now, if that's the case, if our working class folks are so essential to the way our country runs, then why is it that they are so disregarded and so underappreciated in this country? Well, check this out. Y'all better take a seat for this one and take a sip of this coffee, because we're about to get a little bit woker. Now, our disregard for the working class goes all the way back to slavery. The legacy of slavery in the United States of America is still alive, y'all. And we see it in the way that we treat our working class people. Think of it this way. The entire foundation of this country was founded on free labor. And it was free because it was extracted from African people. Slavery. And what that did was create an artificial wealth for the white ruling class. I call it artificial because it was based on the idea that people can be used and abused for their labor and used to consolidate wealth in exchange for almost nothing. Sure, nowadays we are free to make any choice we want. We are free to go places that we want. Yes, things look much different at face value than they were during the slave era, but in the way that the ruling class consolidates wealth, the way that our richest people consolidate the wealth of that labor, still emulates the way slave society looks. It still looks the same. Oh, y'all, that is a tick. We're out. And since slavery was ended in 1863, the rich ruling class has still tried to disempower the working class, tried to keep them under their control, because when you control the labor, you control the wealth. And sure, after 1863, when slavery was ended, the rich ruling class no longer had complete control and no longer had completely free labor, but they have tried to keep it as free as possible with extremely low pay, extremely low workers' rights, and that rich ruling class has stayed in power. They have continued to be the government that creates the laws that keep people from accessing their basic resources in a way that is equitable, which means that people have to keep working in order to stay alive. And so it creates this artificial mentality for us workers that we need to keep working and fueling this beast, this capitalist beast, in order to survive. And it creates this mentality, it plants these seeds in our heads that says, we need them. But the fact is that they need us. So right now, the rich ruling class is starting to panic because the economy has been frozen, and they're realizing that the working class is realizing that they are in fact the ones who keep the motor running. And if that's the case, and people start to realize that they're the ones who are actually running what's going on around here, they're gonna get empowered. So we are starting to see a massive failure of our government. Folks who need assistance aren't getting it from the government. And what they're actually getting is more community support. Smaller communities, towns, cities are organizing to get people food, to get people resources, everything. People are coming together locally in small communities to support each other in a way that the government just can't figure out. So what does this have to do with farming, David? Well, to be honest, the place that we see poor working conditions the most is in the agriculture industry. And y'all, I wish these were just conspiracy theories. This is in fact an analysis of history, all right? Remember how earlier we were talking about the war on communism that America went on and how they were trying to disempower workers across the world? Well, that war on communism crippled the economies of other Latinx countries in such a way that it, to this day, makes people have to go and search for jobs in the US. So when folks come from another country to come and work in the American economy, the American government can create laws that disempowers these people because they're not citizens. So if they're not citizens, they don't have the same rights as Americans do, so they can abuse them even more. And look, this has happened not just with Latinx people. This has happened with the Japanese community, with the Filipino community, with the Chinese community. Do you have any idea how much our agriculture has depended on the knowledge of people from other parts of the world? These are not unskilled workers. You know why they come to work in the ag industry? Is because they bring all those years of knowledge and experience, generations and generations of land stewardship. These are not unskilled people, y'all. These are people with serious skills, and they are putting in a lot of work to make sure that we get our basic needs, to make sure that we get our food. And you know why they need our knowledge and generations of land stewardship? Well, that's because when colonizers first came to this country, they dispossessed the indigenous people of all their lands, and we lost all that knowledge of land stewardship. So of course they need folks from other places to come and bring their knowledge and support them. Y'all, we have to acknowledge these legacies if we're gonna have any understanding of how to treat our workers, our working class, how to treat the people that are really putting in the work. It goes way back, but you know what? We're here still. We are still stewarding this land. That is some of the greatest work that you can ever do. So because of slavery, because of these years of oppression and disempowerment of the working class, agriculture has become the rotten foundation of capitalist society. But today, on May 1st, 2020, we need to recognize that agriculture, land stewardship can be the way to cultivate a society that's based on equity and abundance. We're reclaiming that. We refuse to replicate the legacies of slavery and feed into this system that uses, abuses, and extracts labor from people. And that is why we are spreading compost today. Wait, what? Look at this, y'all. Look at this beautiful... You know what compost is? Or was? It used to be poop. It used to be a bunch of rotten things. And it's a bunch of dead things too. But out of compost, we grow the most beautiful things. Now for all you compost nerds out there, I know that there's a lot more that goes into compost. And at any point, I'd love to have a conversation with you over that if you'd like, because it's chess, it ain't checkers. When we make compost, we're making something beautiful and important out of something that used to be dead and rotten. We grow food, nutritious food that keeps us alive. And then it ends up becoming the nutrition, the medicine that we need. So yes, we are forever tied to this legacy of slavery, of colonization, and of abusive agricultural economies. But you know what? We can compost that. Compost that. When something bad happens, take the time, break it down the way it needs to be broken down, and grow something beautiful out of it. Some things will only take a couple minutes to compost. But some things will take years and years. Slavery was around for over 200 years. It'll take at least that long to completely break down that legacy. But here we are. It's 2020. What better time than now? Who better person than you? So the more that we compost, the more that we'll be able to grow the communities that we want to see. The types of communities that nourish us and allow us to be successful and allow us to thrive and just be. And that is work that we all can take on. So happy International Workers' Day, y'all. It is May Day, but it is also Farm Friday with FoodWhat. My name is David, and I hope y'all can get your compost on, and I hope y'all have a good weekend. We will see you later.